Hello everybody and welcome to episode 24 of Overwatch This. I'm back. Hi.
Joel's back.
And Ben is obviously here. We've got a few things to talk about today, namely our next hero who's due out next week. We're going to talk about me a little bit as well. It won't be a boring promise. And we've also got an AMA to discuss. So, Ben.
Hi.
Tell me what's been going on in Overwatch, because frankly, I've been away. So between GDC and a bit of holiday, I have sort of lost track of things. I know we've got a new character, definitely isn't the one I was expecting when I went away, and a few other things have happened. So I guess the big thing is we've got a new hero who's due out on Tuesday.
Yeah, so they actually announced her release date. Usually they kind of leave this to be discussed.
Yeah.
People just to work it out.
Yeah, there was a video yesterday of
of
someone doing doodles of it, and then
they did a little making of Orisa, and then they kind of announced after that. Oh yeah, it's out next week, which means the patch 1.9 will also come out next week. And the Orisa making of video was actually pretty good. It kind of showed some behind the scenes stuff about how they put characters together. They've always spoken about how they'll have a character that is using the model of another character with like one small change so that nothing gets confusing. Like with Anna, they just had Widowmaker with the hood on to represent her when they were doing tests.
That makes sense.
With Orisa, it was Zarya carrying Bastion's gun.
Right, okay.
And it looks kind of funny. And they talked about how when they were putting it together, they discovered that it was instantly fun even when they were playing it like that. And so they realised that once they got it all together and got all the art in, that's when it would actually be enjoyable.
I was expecting a robot. It is a robot. It's a robot. But it's quite a weird looking robot.
Yes, it's a weird bug thing.
It sort of looks like a kind of a maraca mixed with a Christmas cracker mixed with a robot.
Yeah, it's quite cool, I thought.
What kind of character is this going to be?
So it's a tank, and they call it an anchor tank, which basically means one where they are actually able to stand somewhere and just tank damage and declare somewhere as their area. Winston can do it a little bit with his bubble shield.
Yeah.
Reinhardt can do it a lot better with his right click. Like, you know, I'm standing here and you can't burst my shield without shooting it for like a good 5 or 6 seconds.
Right.
She has similar abilities to that. She can also move characters around. She has a lot of HP herself. So yeah, like she's very much in that slot of not dealing a ton of damage. She's got a decent gun, but being able to protect an area and protect her team, and very much being a support character in that she stops them taking damage.
And what's the ultimate?
So the ultimate is a big like power-up sphere that she puts on the ground that powers up all her allies around her.
Okay.
I think it increases their damage as well as increasing their damage reduction.
Okay, that's quite cool. So out next week, How does this fit in with all of? Because when I left, there was a 10-year-old girl who made robots, and now there's a robot.
Well, you can probably guess the exactly
but
what
not the
there.
robot we sort of thought it might be.
No, so there was this whole thing where people thought it was going to be like this spider tank that people had seen in a couple of bits of art.
Or Athena, which was the other theory that was going around as well. It's neither of those things.
So yeah, it was neither of those things. The Athena stuff was just kind of a guess that was going on based on them liking to link different bits of the world together. It would have made sense, but it also is something they can do later on. The thing with the spider tank basically came from there is another character that we've now realised is in 2 bits of separate concept art, who is this kind of weird spider lady thing who shoots like laser beams out of these weird wings she has.
Obviously.
Yeah, of course. And whether she will show up in the future, or whether she's been disregarded, or whether she turned into a character that we already have, we don't really know.
Right.
Blizzard's complete lack of talking about her would suggest that either she's... so in the AMA that we'll talk to later, Jeff said that they don't dumpster any character ideas. They just kind of leave them on the back burner until they have a better idea. But whether she's been just kind of put to the side, or if she's something else that's upcoming, maybe that's sort of suggested by how little they're talking about it.
Okay.
But the whole kind of spider visual that we were seeing is an entirely separate thing.
Right.
And the 4chan leak, which is where a lot of those ideas came from...
Always reliable.
Always reliable. Turned out to us, it was more reliable than you might expect, but it was missing some details. It got the name wrong. And people saw...
Minor detail.
People saw it talking about like a multi-legged robot and assumed it was this spider thing, when actually it's Orisa, who is based off these other robots that are in Numbani that were built to defend the city and be kind of peacekeeping robots.
Okay.
And now she's here, and she's
she's about to be here, which I'm sort of surprised by how quickly that's happened. But there we go.
Yeah.
The other thing that was going on when I left was people were whinging about Bastion.
Yeah.
Including some people on our team. So how's that going?
So they nerfed him down again. again, we're not really positive as to whether those nerfs have put him back into being useless.
Right.
He's certainly not getting a ton of play at the highest levels.
Right.
But kind of breaking into that meta game is pretty difficult, and there isn't really enough games going on regularly that you would expect people to be able to innovate very quickly. So maybe he's good now. He's definitely not massively overpowered, which he was before. He no longer takes 0 damage when he's in his sentry form or in his tank form. Phil is very upset about it. As our Bastion main, he is. That's true.
Phil just wants the easiest way to win. I think that's pretty much what he's
we all in life in Overwatch.
So it's a work in progress, really. They'll figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they're going to keep playing with Bastion and they'll see how he's doing now. Maybe he'll get some more changes in the patch after this one, which should be 1.10, which should hit the PTR, presumably slightly after this patch goes live. So sometime next week, maybe the week after, depending on exactly how big the changes are.
Cool. We'll talk about the AMA in a second, like you said. Anything else we should know?
Not particularly.
Seems quiet, given that we're 6 days away from a new hero.
Yeah, I think because the PTR's gone on a little longer than expected. So basically, when the PTR went up, you would have bet that this patch would have come out yesterday, based on previous models and how they've done stuff before. They said this patch is going to be on for a little longer, and what that means is that everyone's kind of used to the stuff that's on the PTR. There's been debate back and forth about it. Everyone's kind of dealt with, okay, Sombra's getting buffed, Ana's getting nerfed. They did since what we discussed about last week. They did bring back some of the Ana changes to be a little less hardcore,
right?
But she's still being brought down on the damage side, which is mainly what we talked about. So yeah, I think people are just kind of waiting for this patch now to see how it affects pro play and competitive play, and see if the Ana nerfs actually kind of take her out of the meta or at least reduce her impact. And then we'll go from there with patch 1.10.
Cool. So the other thing that's happened is we had a Reddit AMA out of the blue,
Slightly, yes.
which is sort of reflective yet again of Jeff Kaplan's general loveliness. There's some stuff to talk about in terms of characters and background to Overwatch and stuff. Just how did this come about? Because it's a bit odd.
We don't really know, to be honest. So someone made a thread on the subreddit about 4 days ago, I guess maybe 5 days ago now, that said AMA request Jeff Kaplan. Obviously, that would be a nice thing to do in the Overwatch subreddit. It got some number of thousand upvotes, as any decent thread in that subreddit does. And then it just disappeared off the front page and everybody forgot about it, and somebody probably made the same thread in a month. Kind of happens every so often. Except this time, 3.5 days later, Jeff Kaplan showed up and was like, yeah, okay, and just posted a comment in the thread that just said, yeah, let's do this. And then I think he posted a bunch of kind of answers to fairly standard questions like, what hero do you play and how did Overwatch come about and that sort of thing. And then, so because when you post it in a Reddit thread, that doesn't automatically bump it to the top of the subreddit or anything, nobody actually knew this was happening until A, it was kind of already over, and B, the only reason you'd find out is if someone told you or tweeted about it. As far as I could tell, the official accounts didn't, let them know this was happening. Seems like Jeff just decided, okay, I can answer some questions. It's
pretty good.
I'm the boss of this game, so.
It also means that my date request with Taylor Swift is probably still live.
Yeah, I think so.
It's still going to definitely happen. Yeah. So he talked about a few characters, incoming changes potentially to some of the characters?
Yeah, so the character he mentioned twice was Lucio, in saying that they were looking at him internally. Now, there's a lot of different states that a character can be in when they're being looked at. Obviously, at the moment, they're probably thinking about changes they might be doing in 6 months to some character or other. But there is changes they're thinking about internally that they don't tell us about, changes they're thinking about internally that they do tell us about, PTR changes, and then live changes, right? Yeah. So once you get into that second stage where they're telling us about them, that is a lot more committed to that change than the ones where they don't. Because once you mention something to a community, they will assume it's happening unless you have an incredibly well-trained community or you are incredibly good at saying, we're not sure this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Which Blizzard really hate doing because they've been punished for that sort of stuff in the past.
Yeah, communities will tear you apart if you've promised something, or even mentioned something once in a tweet and don't end up doing it. So,
yeah, exactly. Look, I've seen Riot manage to do it a couple of times, but that's because they have such an iterative process that's so public. Overwatch isn't quite like that yet. And I think he mentioned it twice. He said some specifics about feeling like the character didn't have enough impact. And as we discussed last week, Lucio is incredibly good, but he's kind of passively incredibly good. He's very good because he heals his whole team all around him, and he can move around quite fast, and his ult, again, is like a passive increase to everybody for a little bit of time. So I expect there are going to be some changes coming to him. I would assume they will feel like nerfs, but maybe not be nerfs. So there might be like one ability gets redesigned, or they add an ability but take his ultimate away, or make some kind of interesting change like that. It feels like it's going to be a bigger change than we reduced his healing by 5 and changed his speed boost ultimate to be a slightly lower percentage, because they don't like doing that, and also I think they wouldn't want to just kind of nerf him, because he's quite a loved character and quite central to the
But as you say, no sense of when this might happen. Or...
No, I mean, I would guess it would be in the next PTR, because they've mentioned it.
Right.
And there's been a few times where they've said, oh, here's a character we're looking at internally, here's some changes we're looking at internally, and then they've been on the next PTR. Right. Particularly at this moment where we are a week and a half, 2 weeks away from what we expect the next PTR date will be. But again, it is possible these changes won't happen at all. I doubt it. Exactly what they'll be, he didn't mention, other than saying we want to target, make him more impactful, and presumably they want to stop him being such a dominant healer.
And then there's some cosmetic or potentially incoming cosmetic stuff that we'll quickly touch on.
Yeah, so he mentioned specifically a Widowmaker Legendary was on the way. He said soon and that it was worth the wait, but I suppose he would. He also mentioned, and this was in a poster a while back, that a McCree Legendary was coming.
Right.
I just thought I'd put that in there just because it's another bit of cosmetic stuff that we know. That was on the Battle.net forum a while ago.
Is that something you think they just drop, or they time with an event?
I'm guessing that is probably both of those, given they've mentioned them both within quite close to each other. I would guess that they're in the next event, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I think they said there isn't going to be an Easter event. In the same way that we didn't have a Valentine's Day event, even though they did like a couple of sprays for it, but they didn't do skins and that sort of thing. It's also possible we're just going to get like a surprise event next week, because it's been a little bit of time since the last one.
Yeah, only a little bit. Though.
Yeah, but I mean, they had the Chinese New Year one very close to the Winter
Wonderland
one.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's possible we're going to get a surprise event next week. I doubt it. I would expect maybe it will come with patch 1.10 at the start of April, I suppose, or midway through April.
Maybe it'll be an April Fool's event that won't actually exist.
We can only hope.
Yeah. And then there was some more kind of background stuff about Jeff Kaplan himself, and also Project Titan as it is or was, I suppose.
Yeah, he talks about some of how like the Overwatch's heroes specifically grew out of Project Titan, like who they were based on when that game was like an MMO with kind of standard classes and that sort of thing. The details are fairly interesting, because he says not every hero is based off something that was in Titan, which is something that a few people have kind of assumed,
right?
Because they've mentioned it a couple of times. And he talks specifically about like Tracer came out of this jumper character, but the original, like the jumper character that was in Titan, had loads of different abilities, and a lot of that they simplified for turning it into this 4 ability, no progression system, or like power progression system shooter. And then he also talked about, for example, Reinhardt came out of this one character, but that character, while it looked like Reinhardt and had a shield, that's all that was the same, and everything else was completely different.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting stuff. You like history and you like thinking, you want to know more about Project Titan, as people often do. And it also, just some interesting bits about how game development works and where stuff comes from. And then as far as Kaplan himself, he kind of just talked about his history a little bit. It's not really a giant secret that when he used to be a really high-level EverQuest player, he was a bit of a dickhead.
That's his words or yours?
Dickhead exactly is my words.
Right, okay.
But if you go and find some of his old posts and that sort of thing, he was just, a very
We
angry
mean this with love, Jeff, honestly.
Very angry kind of young man that played games on the internet and didn't like the way that his game was going as far as, development.
We've all been there.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly nice to other members of the community. He talked a little about that, talked about how he's a lot happier now than he was when he was back then. Talks about, even talked quite candidly about pay, and how in the position he's in now, he's seen quite a lot of, how much people get paid. He's never seen anybody that got paid as little as he did when he started in the industry in 2002.
Right. Wow.
And talks a little bit about how if you want to like chase your dreams, you should, but there are going to have to be sacrifices in terms of progression and career progression, that sort of thing. And he only started making games when he was 29, which I actually didn't know.
Let's hope for, well, not me, but some of you, yeah.
And yeah, he just kind of talks about some stuff about how he feels about the community, and mentioned that he just doesn't like it when they're mean to each other. He really doesn't like it when they call developers lazy, which is personally, like, lazy is the one thing that I just don't say anymore when it comes to developers.
It's quite an accusation about developers, journalists, or basically anyone. It's quite the thing to say about people. obviously the AMA is still out there if people want to see it, but you should definitely go to our site and read our summary of it instead, because it's much better.
Yeah, definitely.
And presumably this is a thing that will probably happen again in the
I think
not
so.
too distant future.
His sign-off post said, "I'll try and get some more developers to do these." Quote, "They're much more interesting and informative than I am anyway." Classic Jeff. And I expect they're going to keep doing these because it seems like the reaction to it was quite good. So I only saw his reply, so I don't know how many stupid questions were asked that he didn't answer.
Almost certainly a lot.
Almost certainly quite a lot.
Yeah.
But it seemed like there were enough questions that he could provide interesting answers for, that this could happen again with other developers and they could discuss different stuff.
Well, that's it for this week's show. Thank you for joining us. Please do subscribe, hit the bell, give us a like, give us a comment. I don't know, send tweets. Next week we'll be back talking about the release of Orisa. Obviously, patch 1.9 will be here, and we'll be discussing anything else that's going on in the world of Overwatch.